I absolutely love ghost stories about driving at night. Just think about it. It's pitch dark, you're all alone inside a small, enclosed car with nothing but blind spots behind you. And if you're really unlucky, you're the only one on the entire road. Then you start to feel like something's following you. If it's lurking outside, there's no way you dare to pull over. But if it ignores the physical walls and comes inside, now you are stuck in the same tiny space with it. Okay, that's enough. If I keep going, I won't be able to sleep tonight. Now, this episode story comes from a taxi driver who shared a chilling experience, something that happened to him and one of his coworkers. While you're watching, if this little ghost pops up on screen, that means a jump scare is coming. So if you're easily scared, close your eyes when you see it. You ready? Let's go. I used to be a taxi driver for 3 years, but not the regular kind, weekly charter rides. Compared to normal cabs, our jobs were way more flexible. No matter how far or how late, we take the job as long as the price was right. Business was actually pretty good. But even so, in 2012, I swore I'd never do it again. I even sold the car. My family and friends didn't get it. I told them it was just too exhausting, but honestly, that wasn't the real reason. The truth is, I had too many creepy encounters and I couldn't take it anymore. The first time something really bizarre happened was in November 2009. That night, I got a call from a regular client. He had an urgent matter and needed to get to a remote village over 90 kilometers away. I hesitated at first. Driving deep into the countryside at night is kind of a taboo in our line of work. The roads were not safe. There had been robberies before, people ambushed by thugs hiding in the dark. It was risky. But the guy was not only a friend, he also offered to pay double. And at that time, I was pretty broke. After going back and forth in my head, I finally gave in. The trip there went smoothly, but on the way back, it was already past 10 p.m. The road ahead was full of potholes, surrounded by nothing but quiet forests or massive, looming mountains. Not a single house in sight. I couldn't help feeling uneasy. So I stepped on the gas, hoping to get home as soon as possible. I carefully made my way through the mountains. Around midnight, my wife called. She was worried about me. I told her I still had about an hour to go and told her not to worry, just go to bed. Of course, nothing was going to be that simple. As I was climbing this long, steep hill, something weird happened. My car started losing power. No matter how hard I hit the gas, it just kept slowing down, until eventually, it completely died. The engine shut off. I panicked. Breaking down in the middle of nowhere at night, might as well have walked into a den of robbers. And the weirdest part, I had just gotten the car serviced that day and it was full of gas. How could it just stall like that? The more I thought about it, the more anxious I got. I turned on my floodlights, trying to figure out what to do. The mountains at night were pitch black, like thick ink surrounding my tiny car, made me feel even more scared. But I forced myself to get out and try fixing it. I worked on it for ages, but nothing helped. The engine would start, but the moment I gave it gas, it died again. After half an hour of trying, I gave up. There was only one option left: call for help. I pulled out my phone, but I froze. Not even one bar of signal. Now I was totally cut off. Honestly, if a pack of wolves had shown up and eaten me, no one would have even known. I quickly shut the windows, locked the doors, turned off the lights and the music to save power, and just sat there, shaking, smoking, and praying nothing worse would happen. Around the second half of the night, I couldn't stay awake any longer and started nodding off. Then suddenly, I feel something moving around outside the car. Something was lightly patting on my rear window. I snapped awake, freaked out, and turned on all the lights. Looked behind me, nothing. This happened a few more times. Eventually, I just left the lights on. Somehow, That gave me a little peace of mind. Thankfully, around 5 a.m., the sky started to brighten a bit, and I could finally see my surroundings. And that's when I realized I had parked in a small valley surrounded by graves. I had been stuck in a cemetery the whole night. Panicking, I quickly tried to start the car again. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. And boom, it started. Just like that, hit the gas, everything was perfectly normal. I sped home like a madman. When I got back, I came down with a high fever. Not sure if it was from the cold or something else. My older brother rushed over to check on me, and I told him the whole story. As soon as I described the location, he looked completely shocked, didn't say a word for a while. Then, after thinking for a bit, he asked me, "Do you remember what Grandpa used to do?" "Yeah, he used to be a cop." Not just any cop. Grandpa was the deputy chief of the county police. He personally caught and even supervised the execution of a lot of criminals. And that place where your car broke down, that was the old execution site. Back in the day, they used to shoot people there. The bodies of unclaimed prisoners were buried right on the spot. When I heard that, I was completely stunned. Cold sweat poured down my back. So, the car breaking down was connected to those graves? Could it be that the souls of those criminals recognized me and came back for revenge? I don't think it was about revenge. It felt more like the spirit just wanted to trap you. I've actually heard a lot of similar stories before, like people walking past a graveyard and somehow never reaching the end, only to realize they've been circling around the same area the whole time, or their car just suddenly refusing to start no matter what. If someone's energy is weak at the moment, that's when the spirit might take the chance to slip in. But if you can hold out, well, you might just have to spend there the whole night. And honestly, for spirits that did bad things while alive, what right do they have to seek revenge? The next story is something of an urban legend among taxi drivers in our area, but unlucky me, I actually ran into it myself. It happened around March 2010. There had been a really tragic traffic accident not long before. A young pregnant woman in her 20s was crossing the road in the suburbs late at night when she was hit by a speeding taxi. To make matters worse, the drivers fled the scene. And although the woman was rushed to the hospital, she didn't survive the night, and the baby didn't make it either. The whole city was in shock. The news covered it heavily, and a lot of people went to pay their respects to the poor girl. But what made it worse was that the driver was never caught. Turns out, it was a black market cab with fake plates, and the whole vehicle was patched together from a scrap. So unless you check the engine number, there's no way to find this car. Maybe the injustice was just too much. Soon after, drivers started whispering about a strange encounter. The story went that some drivers, late at night, would suddenly notice a woman sitting in the backseat out of nowhere. But as soon as they entered the lit area or passed by people, she would vanish. At first, I just laughed it off. Taxi drivers like to swap spooky stories, especially when things are slow. I figured it was just one more campfire tale. But I was wrong, because it happened to me. It was around 10 p.m. one night. I had just dropped off a passenger in the suburbs and was heading back. Ever since that breakdown in the mountains, I never dared take long-distance night fares anymore, so I was wrapping up early that night. Business had been good, so I was in a great mood. I turned up the car stereo and started jamming to some rock music, enjoying myself. I was driving past a stretch of farmland when, out of nowhere, I heard a laugh. A woman's laugh. I swear it wasn't part of the song. The track was by a male singer, and this laugh, how do I describe it? It comes from deep in the throat, kind of muffled and completely emotionless. My head went blank in an instant. That old legend popped into my mind immediately. I didn't dare turn around. My hands were shaking as I turned down the volume, floored the gas pedal, and sat frozen in my seat. After a while, the sound stopped. I tried to calm myself down, and without thinking, I glanced at the rearview mirror, and I could barely breathe. There was a figure in the back seat. It looked like a woman, with long black hair and a hair clip. In the darkness, it was so strikingly visible that it gave me the creeps the moment I laid eyes on it. I was close to passing out from fear. I just sat there, chanting whatever came to mind, Buddha, God, anything I could think of. Thankfully, I was nearing a more populated area, and I slammed the gas, beating into the light of a street lamp. A few minutes later, I dared to glance back again. Thank God, the woman was gone. The next day, probably still shaken from the night before, I dragged myself to work in a daze. As soon as I saw Hu, the one who first told that creepy story, I grabbed him and told him everything. He stared at me in shock, speechless for a long time. Then he finally said, "It's her. It has to be her. She can't rest in peace." Her? Who are you talking about? You remember that car accident from 2 months ago? What? But how can you be sure it's her? There have been other accidents since then. He held his head like it hurt and said, I know it's her. I was there that night. I helped during the rescue. I saw her. She had a hair clip in her hair. At first, I wasn't sure. Hair clips aren't exactly rare, right? But then I realized, why is she only appearing in taxis and not other cars? Because it was the taxi that hit her and her baby that night. My scalp went numb. Then it hit me. The place I saw her was just a short distance from where the accident happened. She must still be lingering, hoping to find the driver who killed her. At that moment, Hu saw how shaken I was and told me to visit the temple and get some protective charms for the car. After that, I never drove down that road again. Not long after, the police tracked down the hit-and-run driver in another province. He got over 10 years in prison and had to pay a large settlement. And after that, no one ever saw the shadowy woman in the backseat again. I feel like the girl was trying to identify the real culprit, getting into every taxi she saw just to check. If it wasn't the one that hit her, she wouldn't do anything. In a way, it's a kind of righteous revenge. That said, let me give everyone a quick reminder. Don't crowd around accident scenes, and especially don't look at the bodies. Don't say things like, "Oh, how tragic." No, just don't. If your energy happens to be low at that moment, it's really easy to attract something. A spirit might think you are someone who can help them fulfill their final wish. Mr. Wu, the man I mentioned in the last story, was middle-aged and among the most seasoned drivers in the business. He was kind and warm-hearted, so we all enjoyed eating and chatting with him whenever we had the chance. One day, the weather turned nasty, and a few of us drivers gathered in a small diner to shoot the breeze. During the chat, a young driver named Yang brought up something troubling. He said his parents had recently gone to a fortune teller who told them that his birth chart wasn't compatible with his girlfriend's. As a result, they strongly opposed the relationship. The fortune teller also claimed that Yang had been a womanizer in the past life and had racked up a lot of emotional debts. So this life would be full of hardships in love. Yang was feeling pretty down and asked us if we believed in reincarnation and karma. Hearing this, most of us just laughed and called him superstitious. But Wu stayed quiet, silently sipping his drink. After a while, he spoke up slowly. There are things in this world you might not know, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Some things are just too strange for us to explain. As soon as we heard that, we perked up. Wow, sounded like he had a story to tell. So we all urged him to spill it. However, we never imagined this story would leave every one of us frozen in silence by the end. Wu said that around 1995, when the taxi industry was just taking off, he met a man named Wei. Wei was very young, about 25 years old, but strangely, he always had a little boy, about 4 or 5 years old, riding with him in the passenger seat while he worked. It looked pretty odd. One day, Wu couldn't help but ask, Who's the kid? Oh, that's my son. Why do you bring him along while you're working? It takes up space, and with so many strangers getting in and out, isn't that dangerous? What if someone snatches him? It's fine. He's really well behaved. Follows me around everywhere, won't get lost. Wei replied casually, still smiling. But bit by bit, Wu began hearing from others just how tough Wei's life really was. His father had died early, leaving only an aging mother working the fields back in the village. Right after graduating from middle school, he came to Shenzhen to work. He'd been a factory worker, a salesman, you name it, but he wasn't afraid of hard work. He truly believed that if he kept his head down and worked hard, things would eventually turn around. Then during one of those jobs, he met the woman who became his wife. Technically, not his wife. Wei was so poor he couldn't afford a wedding or even register a marriage, so the two simply lived as husband and wife and later had a son together. To give them a better life, Wei worked non-stop, day and night. No matter how tired he was, just seeing his families at the end of the day make it all feel worth it. But life wasn't as kind as it hoped. Back in 90s, Shenzhen had strict checks for temporary residence permits and family planning policies. Because Wei and his wife weren't legally married, their child was considered unauthorized. So, with no other choice, they had to pay a hefty fine to avoid jail time, which completely wiped out all of their savings. That was the last straw for his wife. She couldn't take the poverty anymore. One day, she left behind a letter and disappeared, leaving Wei to raise their son alone. Eventually, Wei came to our town and bought a beat-up used taxi on installment. In this way, he had no money to send his son to kindergarten, so he had to bring the boy along while he worked. Life was hard, but there was still hope. Wei worked tirelessly, so hard in fact that whenever a customer called, no matter the hour or how remote the location, he would always take the job. Now you've got to understand, in the 90s, public safety in China wasn't great. Robberies were common, especially on rural roads, so Wu often told Wei to be careful. But Wei would just smile and say, I've got to pay off the car, feed my kid and my mom. I can't afford not to hustle. It's fine, I don't carry much cash. Worst case, if I run into robbers, they can take what little I have. If it's still not okay, then fine, just beat me up. After all, a beating's better than starving. Hearing that, Would always feel the pain of sorrow. After that, many of them tried to help Wei whenever they could, sending him passengers when they were too busy. Wu, being the warm-hearted guy he was, even offered to help look after Wei's son whenever he worked night shifts. Time flew by, Wei's son had started elementary school, and Wei had finally paid off his debts. Life was slowly getting better. Back then, whenever school let out, people would see this young father drop everything he was doing and drive to the school to pick up his son. He always parked under the same tree across the street, waiting with so much tenderness in his eyes, ready to scoop his boy up into a warm embrace. At this point, Wu's voice dropped suddenly. He paused for a long time, as if remembering something painful. Then he rubbed his reddening eyes and said, "If only life could have gone on like that, no doubt the two of them would have had a happy future. But fate can be twisted. You never know when it's going to snap and hit you where it hurts most." It was winter 1996, just before Chinese New Year. By then, he and Wei had become close as brothers, and Wei's little boy was like family to him too. One cold evening, when frost was already covering the ground, Wei showed up at Wu's place with his son. He said he had to take a passenger to a neighboring county and asked Wu to look after the boy for a while. Of course, Wu agreed without hesitation. But something felt off that night. He just had this uneasy feeling in his gut, so he told Wei, "Are you sure you need to go? It's already too late, and the county's over 100 kilometers away. It's really not safe." "Oh, don't worry. She was just a female passenger. Her father had suddenly fallen seriously ill, and she needed to rush home to take care of him. Besides, she offered to pay double the fare. It's all good, really." Hearing it was a woman, Wu relaxed a bit, so he just told Wei to drive safe and not rush back. The kid would be well taken care of. Then Wu choked up and sighed. I should have stopped him. I really should have. If I had, maybe he wouldn't have died such a terrible death. So that night, Wei drove off into the darkness, but the next day, he didn't come back. Wu got worried and kept paging him over and over, but never got a response. On the third day, a horrifying rumor started spreading across town. In a remote mountain ravine, over 20 kilometers from the city, someone had found a burned corpse. At the scene, there were some charred bits of paper and 2 partially burned leg bones. A terrible sense of dread hit Wu. He rushed to the police station to ask for details. The cops showed him some of the papers found at the scene. Wu took one glance and broke down, wailing uncontrollably, because he instantly recognized what those papers were. They were his son's homework notebooks, the ones the boy always left in Wei's car. The police told him the killer had used those notebooks as kindling to set Wei's body on fire. The case was so brutal that the authorities quickly formed a special task force. Within just over 2 weeks, they solved it. Turns out, the whole thing was a setup. The passenger was part of the trap. She'd called the cab just to make Wei let his guard down. When they reached that deserted area, the girl pretended she needed to use the bathroom. As soon as the car stopped, 2 men who'd been hiding nearby rushed out and hijacked him. Worse yet, all 3 of them were drug addicts. They only wanted the car so they could sell it and buy more drugs. And to avoid getting reported, they brutally killed Wei. After the news broke, the entire local taxi industry was shaken. Everyone came together to visit Wei's son, donating whatever they could, but when it came to what to do with the boy, people couldn't agree. Some suggested sending him back to the countryside to live with his grandmother. At least there was family there. But Wu strongly opposed that. He knew how much Wei loved his son and how worried he'd been that the kid might grow up in the same kind of poverty he had. And besides, Wei's mother was too old to raise a child. So in the end, Wu made a decision. He would adopt the boy himself. He would take over the role of father from his best friend. Of course, nobody told the child the truth. They just said his dad had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. The boy was only 6 or 7 and didn't really understand. He didn't question much, except for one thing. When his dad would come pick him up from school again. That one sentence shattered Wu's heart. From then on, Wu started driving to the school every day, parking under that same tree, waiting for the boy just like Wei used to. But maybe, just maybe, fate hadn't completely abandoned that little boy. About 2 months after Wei's death, one afternoon, Wu finished his work and, as usual, went to the school to pick up the boy. While he was waiting by the gate, he noticed a little white puppy sitting under the tree across the street. It looked like it had just run a long way, panting with its tongue out. Wu didn't think much of it. Dogs like this were everywhere in town. So he picked up the little boy and drove home. But from that day on, Wu started seeing that little dog every day at the school gate. Sometimes it would circle around the tree, other times it sat there, gnawing on a bone. But whenever school was about to end, it would always sit up straight, eyes locked onto the school gate, like it was waiting for someone. Wu grew curious. He started paying closer attention, wondering whose dog it was. Then one day, while he was about to drive off with Wei's son, he happened to glance in the dog's direction and suddenly felt a chill. That little white dog was sitting just 4 or 5 meters away, staring not at him, but at Wei's son. And it wasn't just a normal look. Wu couldn't explain it, but the way the dog looked at the boy, it was like it understood everything. Like there was some deep emotion behind those eyes. Then one day, Wei's son had suddenly brought the white dog back with him. The boy said a bunch of kids had been bullying the dog, throwing rocks at it and kicking it. But the dog wouldn't leave. It kept circling around him and nuzzling up to him. So he decided to take it home, hoping to give it a new home. But Wu was hesitant. His daughter had once been bitten by a dog, and he was afraid the same might happen to the boy. After thinking it over, he gave the dog something to eat, but then gently chased it off. If not for what happened later, he would have just let the dog go and forgotten about it. That day, Wu was back at the school gate, waiting for the boy. The white dog was there again, now around 5 months old, almost fully grown, but still skinny and frail. Just then, a man suddenly crept out from behind a tree, holding a rope loop. Before the dog could react, the man quickly threw the rope over his neck and caught it. Startled, the dog started struggling wildly, but it was no use. Within seconds, the dog was tied up tightly by the dog catcher. At first, Wu didn't think too much of it. After all, dog catchers were common in the area. They often snatched up strays to sell at the market. But then, the little white dog let out a heart-wrenching whimper and twisted his face around toward Wu, eyes filled with desperation pleading. Wu was a kind man, too kind to ignore it. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore and walked over and asked the man what was happening. The man, a rural-looking guy, said angrily, "This stupid dog. Ever since it was born, it's been running off all over the place. Took me forever to catch it today." Then the man told Wu he was from a nearby township. Wu was startled. That place was more than 20 kilometers away. How did such a small dog make it so far on its own? At the same time, the man kept complaining. It was barely 2 months old when it started sneaking out, always coming back filthy and tired, and then it ran off again. If my neighbor hadn't seen it hanging around there, I wouldn't even have known. Once I get it back, I'm stealing it. May I ask which village you are from? Someplace village. Why? Well, that name, it sounded so familiar. Wait, wasn't that the village right next to where Wei was murdered? And then it hit him. The timing matched up. This dog, it would have been born around the same time Wei died. Wu felt like the ground was shifting under his feet. His hands trembled and his eyes welled up. This can't be real. How is this even possible? It took Wu a moment to snap out of it, but when he did, the man was already gone. Without hesitation, Wu jumped into his car and took off in the same direction, not even waiting for the little boy. He had to catch up. After driving a few hundred meters, he finally saw the man again, walking towards the dog meat market as he carrying the sack slung over his shoulder. Wu slammed on the brakes, jumped out of the car, and grabbed the man's arm. "I want the dog! Please, give it to me!" "What are you doing? The dog is mine. I've got neighbors who can vouch for me." No, I'm not trying to take it. I'll buy it from you. Just name your price." In the end, Wu paid a few dozen yuan to buy the dog and took it home. Wei's son was thrilled. Later, Wu went to visit a well-known Taoist priest in the area. The priest did a quick calculation and said, normally, when a person dies, their soul goes directly into the cycle of reincarnation and awaits the judgment of the deities. But Wei died full of grievance. In that moment, his strongest attachment was his son. That kind of love and sorrow might have left behind a fragment of his soul, ended up in a pregnant dog nearby. Of course, whether that was true or not, Wu said he couldn't prove it. But if such a strange coincidence really happened, maybe it was fate. Maybe even the heavens couldn't bear to separate this father and son. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I'm currently planning a new series, a haunted building tour across China. I'll be covering some of the most infamous haunted houses, the kind that are so well known they've basically become strange tourist attractions. Let me know if you're interested. Also, someone in the comments asked about the ghost stories from the Forbidden City, so what about making that our first stop? Okay, see you in the next one. Don't miss it.